Joining me now is Tamar Harleman, senior reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. DA Willis says her team is ready to go, as we just heard her say. August, of course, begins tomorrow. Do we have any indication to give us any more precise idea on timing?
Well, we actually just got a little bit in the last hour or so. George Chidi, who's an independent journalist down here in Georgia, confirmed that he got a subpoena to come testify before both of the regular grand juries that are meeting here in August and are expected to hear potential Trump-related charges. And his subpoena date says anywhere between August 7th and August 31st. So that means we're not expecting potential indictments this week, but we could see it next week, the week after, and potentially even later into August.
And Tamar, while we're on that, just quickly, what is his role or alleged role in this Georgia story?
George Chidi stumbled upon the meeting of alternate Republican electors at the state capitol here in Georgia in mid-December of 2020. He was there waiting to observe the regular Democratic electors who were scheduled to go at noon, but he saw some Republicans he knew walk into a room, and he thought, okay, that's interesting. He tried to enter the room. He was recording on his phone. He was booted out and told that it was an educational meeting. And of course, we find out later that that was the meeting of the Republican Trump electors, who did end up opening the meeting to the public so people could record. But his testimony could be very crucial, especially since it looks like the DA is still very interested in who organized and participated in this meeting of the electors.
A very educational meeting. Tamara, I understand that cameras are allowed in Georgia state courtrooms. So let me just clarify this. If Donald Trump is arraigned in Fulton County, it will likely be on video. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of that depends on the judge who's going to be overseeing the case that day. We have to file the special paperwork if we want to shoot cameras or record audio in a courtroom. So far, we haven't encountered any problems with that under Judge McBurney as we've gone through the investigative part of all of this, although we don't know who the judge is going to be should Trump or others be indicted in Fulton County. And it all depends on them and what they see. And of course, the Secret Service will be involved in any sort of negotiations should Trump himself be indicted. And of course, they don't want to do anything to put the former president in harm's way. So perhaps they'll make a push to not have this be televised.
I feel like if Donald Trump has a televised arraignment, a lot of our viewers are doing a Stephen Colbert popcorn gif right now. Today, Tamar, you reported on a ruling from the judge on a motion by Trump's team to, quote, gut the Fulton County District Attorney's investigation of interference in Georgia's 2020 presidential election. What was the motion and how did the judge rule?
This was a long time coming. The former president's lawyers submitted a motion back in March that sought to not only disqualify DA Willis from continuing the investigation, they sought to remove Judge McBurney, who's been overseeing this entire process. They wanted to kill the final report of the special grand jury that helped compile evidence for the DA and suppress any of the evidence that they had pulled together during their term. So they really tried to throw the kitchen sink at all of this. The judge smacked them down after we waited a couple months for this ruling. There is a question about whether there will be an appeal, especially before we expect the DA to seek indictments. And there is a hearing scheduled next week with a different judge. Trump's attorneys recently tried to go over Judge McBurney's head to try and get him to rule. And that hearing is on the books for next week. We'll still see if that's going to happen, although it's seeming less likely, especially if Mr. Trump's lawyers appeal.
One last question, Tamar. A lot of this has been playing out publicly, from DA Willis's interview with NBC correspondent Blaine Alexander, where she reinforced the seriousness of the inquiry, to the released portion of the special grand jury report, to the grand jury instructions that were recently broadcast. We just saw Willis speaking over the weekend. Could this be a model for other prosecutors, particularly as they pursue cases against Trump, that this level of transparency works?
Potentially. And it is something that you see Trump and other folks who are targeted in this investigation. We've heard them complaining a lot about it. You see it often in legal filings. This very Trump motion today that the judge ruled on, one of the arguments they were making for disqualifying the DA from the investigation was because DA Willis has been so out front, at least explaining her process and that she was looking for justice. They argued that it compromised the probe. The judge said, "Nuh-uh, I don't think so." But he did mention how it is a different level of not transparency, but just openness that we don't typically
Yes.
see with judges.